I would like to really welcome our guest tonight, Colin Harrison. As you know, I've given you also the link to his website, and I know many of you have visited his site. Colin has kindly agreed and offered to host, to do us this session tonight. As we know, we have had to work a lot online in these recent months, and it seems to be keep going on for quite another amount of time. At least this situation has had one thing which is favorable, because it has made us contact more people who are, or photographers who are doing things abroad, and thus managing to get them virtually here for you as lecturers in sessions such as today's. I will not spend much time talking about Colin. I'm sure you can all go on his site and see what he does. It's very interesting. So, Colin, I would pass you on, and you can kick off right away.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for the kind intro. Yes, my wife and I have visited Malta a couple of times, so at least we've got a lie of the land. But yes, what Kevin said was absolutely correct about having a chance to spread my images around the world. And I just had a booking tonight from Panama, and that makes it will be my 11th country. So it's been quite a bit of a game for me to a certain extent to see how many people I can actually show my talks to. But I like sharing my images anyway. But this particular talk I started nearly 2 years ago as a big project, and I've spent a lot of time doing it, but also I've learned a lot as well. So I've really enjoyed it. So what I'm able to do tonight is pass on to you some of my secrets, basically, and telling you how easy it is to produce quite acceptable images. So okay, so we'll go on. Obviously I like to put the date, like to make sure I'm in the right place. That's me. Now, qualifications, obviously this is within sort of the camera club world to a certain extent, but you see I've been working on them, getting qualifications since 1993, and I do admit I've worked hard, sort of getting to this standard to a certain extent. But I was very pleased to get the last 2 awards. If you look in the bottom right, the ASDA and the HSBC for Services to Shopping Award and Services to Banking Award. I know they're a bit tongue-in-cheek to a certain extent, but when I give these talks, I have to sort of go online and make sure you actually have got an ASDA and an HSBC in the country I've given the talk to. But this really sums up my qualification. Takes lousy photograph, but is an absolute whiz at getting letters after his name. So just give you an idea, because this sort of question that came up when I first showed my talk. So just to give you a very quick outline, the first part will show how I sort of photograph the flowers, and the second part will deal more with the software I actually used. So a statement that I came across: if you truly love nature, you will see beauty everywhere. So this is, in the beginning, it really showed my almost lack of interest in flowers. I always sort of put my flowers in a sort of a landscape type picture, so I wasn't looking at the flower. In this case, it's a cliff rose at Dead Horse Point in Utah. It just sort of filled the bill to a certain extent. And the same here, another national park in America, Arches National Park, with the yucca plant, Harriman's yucca, and another flower plant from Utah called Mule's Ear. But again, when I took the picture, I wasn't really looking at the flower. I was just looking at the sort of the atmosphere in a place called Goblin Valley in northeast Utah. But coming much nearer to home now, you saw from the map at the beginning, we live halfway between Cheltenham and Oxford in the sort of southern part of England. And this particular flower, called snake's head fritillary, likes the soil in this area, and it accounts for about, I think, about 80% of this particular flower actually in the country. But also, again, we're not known for past flowers in this country, but again, we live near an area called the Cotswolds, and this is just at the edge of a field of past flowers, but say they're not that common in this country. But again, this is this sort of different technique looking at flower photography. As I said, it's just the intro really to my talk, and again, we've got a plentiful supply of different orchids. But when I started doing my talk, it was just interesting to see the comparison of the sizes of the pictures I was taking, the difference between, say, the clematis, 150 millimeters, and the forget-me-not down to 4 millimeters. But I do admit I'm not a gardener, so I don't know what the type of flowers I'm often photographing. But in my notes, I give you some information on why it's actually called forget-me-not, and it's quite interesting, but you can read that in my notes. So inspiration, again, I looked at loads of authors, did a lot of research, and this is the person that really came to mind, Pierre Joseph. It won't mean anything to you, it didn't mean anything to me, but you will know his photographs. Basically, if you can understand my humor, he was around at the time when they were filming Les Miserables in France, and he, as you see here, he is probably the greatest ever botanical illustrator, and this is some of his work. Right, if you go to your W.H. Smith, I think you've got some in Malta, you will see his pictures on greeting card, and if you happen to have one of his pictures in your attic, they probably will sell for about $3.5 million US dollars, so worth having. So what is fine art? Okay, fine art photography is created in line with the vision of the photographer as artist, using photography as a medium for creative expression. The goal of fine art photography is to express an idea, a message, or an emotion. So this is my effort of trying to almost reproduce Ridote's type pictures, and I tried to approach it going to actually produce them, and I couldn't. But it worked the other way. When you're working on an image, you suddenly looked at it and said, yeah, that looks fine art to me. And often they're very simple. This is a tulip, another seed head. I always equate this almost how you sort of imagine this if you're staying in a hotel and you see paintings on the wall, very sort of tranquil type images. And again, flowers, they don't have to be exotic flowers. And this hyacinth just taken in our front garden, but again, given a sort of painterly type treatment. And this is a very recent picture. I was looking around at obviously bits of dying flowers in our garden recently, and I came across this. But again, I said, yeah, that almost sort of falls into this fine art category. But this is our garden in the summer. Said we're not great gardeners, but due to lockdown, we were very lucky that we had 2 supermarkets near us that sold plants all through the lockdown. So every time we did our shopping, we brought a plant back, so we were able to put things around, and it was dual purpose. Obviously they were nice to go in the house, but also they were great to photograph. But if you look at this garden, that's not where my studio is. You think my studio is in the top left, but it's not. My studio is round the corner, round here, and this is my studio just outside our conservatory. But and the lighting is quite even here for photography, but I believe in getting comfortable. As you can see, this is my studio. Get comfortable. So just sit in an old seat that keep in the garden, and just take your time taking the photograph. But also in this particular area, the flowers are taken in the shade. So remember, I call this my studio, but it's not an inside studio. Obviously it's an outside studio. But the lens I'm actually using is a Sigma 105mm 2-point lens macro. It's been produced for years and it's still available. You can pick one up new from about £350, and you pick up a second-hand one for about £250. If it was probably a Canon or a Nikon equivalent to that, it could be around £800 or £900, and I put money on that this would match anything you can get from any other lens. But you may have looked at my website, the style that I've used on the website is very creative and very soft. So when I started taking flowers, I actually found f/16 on my lens, and using the tripod or a monopod, which I don't hardly ever use. But again, my normal style would be this, just 2.8 widest aperture, and you can hand hold it. You don't need a tripod. But this is the copying stand that I told you about. Again, it's an IKEA table, and I just turned it upside down, and I've added pieces of card around it to give me a white or a black backdrop. But I mentioned about giving talks to camera clubs. I do my research, as I did for Malta before I came tonight, and when I did my talk in Philadelphia a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about obviously my table in the last image. I actually told them where they could actually buy them, because they actually did have an IKEA in Philadelphia. I know, I don't know if you've got a main IKEA, but I know you've got your is it Megastore on the island that actually sells IKEA. And I don't know if they actually sell this type of table, or again, you can order one online. You can make one up yourself, because it's not rocket science. But this is the advantage of this particular copying table. You can just sort of turn it around. 1 minute you've got a white backdrop, the next minute you've got a black backdrop. So it's quite easy in that respect. But also another key thing is using a torch. Another mistake I made when I showed this to America, they didn't know what I was talking to. It's called a flashlight in America. But the whole technology in the last few years has changed completely with sort of the LED lighting. But the advantage of most of these LED lighting, I'll say virtually, but they're white balance, and you might want to make an adjustment in your camera, which I tried. At the end of the day, I didn't bother, because it was just a very, very minor adjustment. But also, wait till you finish your cleaning, and you've got nothing left in your Dettol bottle for cleaning surfaces. Then just empty what's left and put water in and use it as a spray. Very, very useful as well. So flower pressing, this is another aspect of my flower photography, and a couple of ways to do it. Basically, one, using a flower press. Nearly all the information I'm giving you tonight, I've given you links in my talk where you can actually buy these, but they're all available online. But this particular system for pressing flowers is putting it in a microwave. I wouldn't recommend it. I used it a bit, but you're not allowed to, or not supposed to, put it in a microwave for too long, because it starts to get a bit hot. But so I actually reverted back to a traditional flower press. Again, you can make one up yourself, or get them online. They're you're probably 16 euros or something online, so they're not too expensive to buy. Or you could even use a book if you wanted to, and stand. But I mean, I know this is almost sort of basics of photography, but you'll see later on you can actually follow what I've shown for advertising, pictures. So it's something different, to a way to approach photography. But also, I keep things simple. That's my method. I'm not doing big areas of flower, and you see 148 millimeters high, and this is normally the size I use for my pictures. So copy and press. So you've pressed the flowers. Then what you do, you copy them. So this is my copy stand. I do admit, if you've got a studio, you'll have all your equipment set up. You could use a tripod for this, but I made this up using an old tripod head, which made it much easier because everything was in a fixed position, and I didn't have to sort of think, where I'm going to move the legs, etc. And this is the bottom part where I actually hold the lights to photograph the flower. And what I've used is 4 bicycle lights, and I mentioned about white balance. Most lights you can probably pick these up. We can in England probably about £4 or £5 again for €6, probably in Malta, or go online and pick them up. So again, they're not expensive, but what they do is give, say, an almost white balance, but a very good balance to your photography. So you can see here, because you're shooting in lights from 4 positions, okay, you could spend thousands of pounds on studio lighting to come up with the same thing, but you could probably do, what I've shown, probably make one for about, say, 20 odd euros. And again, it just goes on and on. I've got a collection probably about 500 or 600 pressed flowers that I've used some of them, and I'll go back another time and re-photograph them. But again, it just gives you ideas for, as I said, even if you don't use them for greeting cards or other forms of advertising. Life in the freezer. Again, this is my another project, which again, it's a very personal thing to a certain extent, but I've got a technique with this whereby a lot of people submerge their flower completely into the water before they put it into the freezer. I don't. I keep about, say, 20% of the flower at the top of the water, and again, that works for me. And these, again, just a selection of 100 of photographs I've got of flowers in the ice, but it's very unpredictable how it's actually going to look. But the advantage of using this technique, you can when you bring it out of the freezer, you can tip hot water on it if you want to. You can use your fingers to melt parts of it if you want to balance the image. So there's almost image within an image. And again, almost sort of going back to the fine art type picture, trying to actually keep the picture fairly simple. And this, again, a different approach to the picture. Again, this is the ice as it actually came out of the freezer, but I haven't gone in close, but just gives you an idea what I said earlier about the top of the flower in this case is just coming out the top of the ice. And again, with this, the pictures are endless. You can sometimes try almost a different technique whereby instead of your say 20% at the water, you might just keep 5%, so you've got less information. But again, it creates a very sort of painterly type picture. And again, as I said, it's just choosing the right flower and not knowing how it's going to work. Again, I've got probably about 30 of these flowers because they're not sort of that big in a freezer compartment to re-photograph again when I get time. But it's okay. When I put this talk together, I thought, how am I going to bore people with, say, 200 pictures of flowers taken exactly the same lighting, same position, probably with all the names. To me, I said, no, that's not my style. I want to do different things. I made a list of about 30 different ways I can show my pictures, and this is another way to show your flowers. Okay, a montage, very simple montage. Again, you've got a picture or even got your pressed flower, and then you put it in a different setting. Here I thought, well, I'll merge one of my flowers into a rock formation, almost like an Indian carving of the rock. This idea was I had the picture and it was just missing something. So again, what I try and do is sort of change the theme and make the picture almost abstract and sort of pictorial to a certain extent. So in this case, I've just added a bird, a red kite. Here, when I saw the picture in the bottom left-hand corner, I thought, oh, that looks almost if it's underwater. So what I did was obviously added a diver. Here, this was a fairly straight umbrella originally, and I've just added one of my flowers to the pole. And if you look at it quickly, you think it looks almost real. But a lot of my photography is luck, and I do admit that. And this is a perfect example. So this is one of the photographs that's been pressed. I put it into Photoshop. Yeah, I just make a point now. Nearly all these pictures, it doesn't really matter what software you're using, whether it's Affinity, Elements, whatever. They've all got this, providing they've got layers and they've got blending modes in there. You can do, I know, everything that I actually did in Photoshop. But here, as I said, I put this image, which was on against a white background, into Photoshop, deleted the white, so it not only deleted the edges, it also deleted part of the flowers. So that suddenly gave me an idea. Added another flower. Of course, it would come in through all the holes in the flower now above it. And you add another one. It goes on, and this is completely random. I do admit I didn't sort of plan them where they were going to go. And it ended up, again, that's just sort of half showing you what I did. And there's the full size of the image. But when I did that, I thought it looked like a mural. And, somebody sort of painted this on a wall. So I thought just added a person, because it makes it look right, if it is actually real or not. So what's plan B? Okay, then this is the Paul Getty Museum. So you see my mural. So I've combined the two at this particular museum in California. So there it is, just adding my pictures to to various walls in their museum. This one was a bit hard to do because of the shapes, and but again, it can become a sort of almost a sort of fairly technical exercise as well. Seeing better day, yeah. Obviously, taking photographs over almost a couple of years, it had the benefit of seeing flowers at their best, but also flowers at their worst. So again, old flowers towards the end of the year, and just presenting them in a frame or just to set the picture off. And again, I could spend all night telling you how many different ways you can actually produce this picture, but we'll talk more about the software in the second half. And again, just coming up with different ideas, different shapes, different colors, different frames. With this image, I often sometimes think a picture in color doesn't work, and I actually put it back to monochrome, and then I actually brought a very small amount of color back into the picture, and then I looked at the color one, and the color one just didn't work, and I sort of ended up at this particular picture. Water droplets, again, quite simple thing to do using my spray that I showed you earlier, but again, there's loads of different ways to do it. But I do admit I found that the best way this is natural rain. It seemed to give a much better pattern. So these are just, again, some of the pictures using different techniques and doing different framing in Photoshop to present the subject. And again, going in sort of fairly close with the lens and using sort of, fairly good lighting on the subject as well. And you can go even further and making them almost, close and making a picture, again, even sort of more surreal. But I found it interesting, and again, just endless number of combination of what you can actually do. And again, I don't mind. You'll probably see, you might comment on the noise and grain on my pictures, but I do admit I do like sort of putting in that. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea doing it that way, but I do like sort of texture sometimes actually in my pictures. So, okay, tip of the day, a couple of hints for you. If you want to try this technique, you can actually buy rain repellent. Basically, it's meant to go on windscreen so the water doesn't stick to the windscreen, but it also applies to flowers. So if you spray this over the flower, then put water over the top, the bubbles won't stick to certain parts, so you can actually control the water much easier. But also something you can try is using this ice crystal spray. If you look on the right, that's the effect you get. You just spray it on a piece of glass, leave it to sort of get hard, and again re-photograph it for a backdrop or whatever. And again, that's just a sort of an example how I've actually imported a flower over this particular ice looking spray. Framing. Sorry.
Hi, Colin. Can I butt in a second?
Yes, certainly.
I think we can, when you want, we'll split. You can stop a bit for questions.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
If you want, in fact.
Yeah, no, I'm easy. That's good. I'm happy. I'm having a quick drink. So, yeah, I'm happy. That's a good idea. So, fire away.
Okay. Those of you who'd like to ask a question, just put on your mic and raise your hand, please. Raise the hand from below here. Meantime, Colin, very good work and very good presentation, going into a lot of detail. And one thing I like, leaving it simple and inexpensive to reproduce the work. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. So any questions then?
Any questions on all this? Okay, they're still thinking, I guess.
Actually, I do admit that. Sorry.
Okay,
yes,
tell
me
what you were going to say. I was going to ask Colin if you were always in love with flowers all your life. No. So you just discovered it at a later point.
Yeah, it was just because I gained my my qualification, the Diamond 3, the Fiat Diamond 3.
Because not because I'm saying it in your face, but your work is exceptional where you showed us those buildings. The ideas are out of this world.
Yeah, you're absolutely right in that. Because of my sort of creative eye, it just lent itself to flowers and doing things with them. And it works in my honest opinion. Well, that's right. I can assure you, it doesn't always work, but and that's the thing is, I've got, since I sort of almost finalised the talk, say a couple of months ago, I've got sort of updates and different things to put in, but on purpose, I try to make my talks flow, and I treat them almost like an audiovisual sequence. You're probably not aware of it when you're viewing, but I'm very aware, sort of going from a horizontal image to a vertical image, going from a dark image to a light image, and that because I'm interested in audiovisual as well.
To make it flow, Colin. No, to make the show flow.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Colin, can I ask you a question? Another one.
Yeah.
How important do you think that your chase for qualifications has improved your photography?
Yes. Yeah.
Switch off your. Just a second. Okay.
Yeah, that is again a very good point. Yeah, it's not only that, but basically, I'm a great believer in judging. I'll lead on from that in a moment. Judging, that you should know what's going on and trends and what's expected in photography, because every part of photography, I would have seen images on that particular subject, and it gives me a benchmark to a certain extent. But the other thing with judging is when I started judging obviously an international level, I was judging, for example, natural history, and similar to your sort of flower comment, I knew what a good natural history picture was, but I hadn't done it myself. So what I consciously did was to go out, start doing natural history pictures, so to understand how things are done. And I think that's a very important thing for judges, and it is very difficult, I know, for them to sort of keep up to date with everything. But the other thing with the qualifications, I think on my website it mentions, it gives me a platform for helping other people, which I really enjoy as well. So although I've got these qualifications, they are a personal thing, and a lot of people it doesn't mean anything to. But I'm pleased to put, like showing this talk to you. I'm really pleased. You wanted to see my talk, so that's really helped me, and obviously sort of talking to so many different countries, it's really interesting, different approaches and the way people say things. And again, it's been really, really interesting for me as well. Sorry to go on a bit, but yeah, sorry, did that answer the question?
No, you answered it. Because I myself think that qualifications are very important, particularly because they challenge you to scale greater heights as well.
Yeah, and also there's at the end of the day, there's not that much difference between a professional qualification, and you can call these amateur qualifications if you want to, because that's probably the case. I'm not earning a living with photography. I do it because I enjoy it, and I always say that's the difference between an amateur and a professional. An amateur doesn't really have to worry whether they get it right or not. It doesn't matter. A professional photographer gets it right every time. Well, they've got to, because that's what they pay for. So that is the main difference between a professional qualification and an amateur qualification.
Okay, so you can proceed with the rest of the talk.
Okay, lovely. Yeah, you probably gathered that I framed most of my pictures, and presentation in a talk is, again, to me, very important. And some software that I've actually used is On One Effect. Although I've got the 209 version, I've actually updated recently to the latest version. But the On One sort of suite of software can do quite a bit. But again, it's in my notes, and you can look it up and see what you might find useful to you. But this is just an example of the borders where you can choose actually in On One Effect. But the thing is, it's not a fixed border. It gives you an idea. Then you can change the size and how it actually works on a picture. So you've got everything under your control, and you can change the color, everything to make the picture work. So this is a few examples. And as you can see, sort of very simple border on these, and also you can sort of reverse the borders. Sometimes they become, you might call this more of a negative border, but you can make it a positive border if you want to. And again, here just give you some examples how the border works. Again, the different techniques. Something I often do is, and I talk about it quite a bit, is if I've got a picture and I've made a frame going around the edge of it, I would duplicate that particular layer and then drag it in this case 80%. So you've got an inner frame, and it can work quite well around a picture. And also what you can do here, I've added a bit of texture to the picture as well, but I've almost got a frame within a frame within a frame, and you can go, do it as often as you actually like. Here I've got again, just a completely different technique with a sort of a heavier frame around the picture, and then an inner frame as well. Here again, you try to match the frame to the picture, and as you see, I was looking for an overlap and almost an overlay from my original picture over the frame, just to sort of almost tone it down. Still life, I do admit, still life is, I think, one of the hardest things to do. And if you go online, you put still life, to me, I wasn't finding many not very good work from people, and I think because it is so difficult to get it right. So this is my effort, but I do something a bit different. What I actually do is I take a photograph of a vase against, say, a white backdrop. The flower here is one of my flattened flowers, my pressed flowers, and then I combine them in Photoshop, add different background layers, so it's actually been made rather than just a single picture. And you can come up with things completely different, and I do agree this doesn't quite work, but you can do it. So I got the press, so a photograph of a flower. I found some red and white blocks on some old card, and I use that. And another thing with this, and sort of linking to the qualifications as well, it's nice sometimes to actually make a panel up. So you see this picture, I could produce, say half a dozen pictures just on this theme. So and you might find one that you actually like the best. And it just following exactly the same formula. Here again, something different, using gearing just to sort of bring in a pressed flower with a fairly sort of dark backdrop. And again, these have been put together afterwards. Different framed, again, a frame within a frame. You've got a very, again, ordinary solid white frame around the picture, and then you've got a broken paper frame within the image as well. I mentioned about making mistakes in photography, and this is again, I did this picture again as a still life exercise. There's some software called Flood that I will give some information in my notes, and you can actually get it free from the manufacturer. So it's an official copy called Flood. And again, I don't know if any of you have actually used it yet. So the reflection is using this software called Flood. Still didn't like it, but then I put it into Topaz Studio 2 and came up with this result. And to me, within looking at it as almost an advertisement, that would work much better. So I did that picture, I didn't like it, and this was pure experiment, and it came out like that. And you know, I was happy with that. And again, adding heavy textures to a still life. So okay, I had a photograph of the vase, I photographed the flowers, and then I put heavy texture over the top of the picture. But again, another one of my trade secrets, the end of last year when I tied them, I found an old box buried in our garden. And I thought, God, that'll make a very good backdrop. So what I actually did with this picture was, again, I do admit I did use a tripod this time on this particular picture. I underexposed my picture by 4 stops, i.e. it was very dark. Then I used my torch to illuminate it. And that was the effect I got. Very, very simple. Just using a torch for to illuminate. I do admit I probably took about a dozen photographs, trying different light and probably, you know, different time I actually illuminated. But to me, that's the magic of photography. Flowers and insect. This is my overlap to a certain extent with between flowers and insect. You might call this insects on flowers, and that's what I was aiming at. But again, as a professional body, I mean, you've probably got all the equipment, and I don't. You've probably got all the dedicated flash gun, but my Canon flash gun packed up, and I bought this. It's a Hamnell 600 RT, quite a powerful flash gun. But my old Canon flash gun took about 2 days to recharge, so I took a picture. I had to wait 2 days before I could take another picture. With this particular flash, recycles in 1.5 seconds, so it's a bit quicker than 2 days. And this, the other thing I made up is the reflectors for my flash gun. I made loads of differently, and funny enough, they all work. And nearly everything all these I actually made up. There's another one that I'm shooting about 400 ASA at about f/16. So I've got very good depth of field and very good illumination to the subject. And all the pictures you're going to see are all taken using this setup. Very pictorial. Again, it's not a natural history picture, and it's just trying to make the image more creative. And this is what the magic of learning this sort of flower photography. I would never have seen insects. And this is using the 105mm macro and using my flash gun, something I would never have done a couple of years ago. And the magic of photography. I took a photograph of the flower, I thought lovely colors. And when I put it on the computer, the fly was actually there. I never saw it. And I call this picture the lookout. And again, a very traditional picture, nothing special, but again, something is new to me. And I can assure you, even if you didn't have a flash gun on a bright day, using a 105mm macro or any macro lens, you could get a picture like this, something I've never done before. And trying to make my pictures a bit more pictorial, relying on color reflection around the bee in this case. And here again, the flower was bright, and that was the main thing, although the bee plays a major part. Then it was the flower that I liked the lighting on to sort of fit into my set subject. Again, you're not worried, because this isn't, say, not a natural history picture. It's just a picture for your own enjoyment. So if anything gets overexposed around the picture, it doesn't matter. It's a personal picture, which, you know, again, I like it. And I got to bring back my textures. Not everybody's cup of tea. Basically, a texture is a picture. It could be a picture of rust, wallpaper, paving, slabs, anything. And you put it over the picture and again change the blending mode or the opacity to create, again, almost a grainy type picture. But this is the magic of flower photography. Again, I mentioned earlier about heavy rain gives you the best light. I was taking a photograph of the sort of the water droplets, Again, the insect landed and I got a picture, but just the magic of seeing the color on the wings of the insect. And I do admit I did a lot of research for my talks, and looking at a magazine, I saw a picture, and I do admit fairly similar to this. I thought, well, that's giving me an idea. I'll wait for it to, stop raining. I'll go and try and find a ladybird. Obviously, most of the time, the ladybirds are always facing the wrong way, and you can't get your picture. But I went out again half an hour later, and this ladybird had just walked onto the leaf exactly in the right position, and I got my picture. But to me, again, it's a personal picture, but it really sort of sums up what I'm trying to get out of my flower photography. And this is a shield bug, another one of my favorite insects. And again, an insect that I wouldn't have seen 2 years ago. But the magic of looking around an insect and just look at its feet. They're not called boots, but they look like boots to me. Again, something I wouldn't have done a couple of years ago. And you can see the quality of the depth of field with using the 105mm lens at f16 or around that area. You might even go up to f20. It doesn't really matter, but you can see, it gives that particular depth to the picture. I just mentioned this, actually, photo stacking. I don't photo stack. I can photo stack, but I'm too lazy to get round to doing it. But basically, you can do a two-step photo stack. You could photograph the front and you can photograph the back, so that you don't have to have 100 different photo stacking images. But photo stacking is an art in its own right. But photo stacking in Photoshop is very easy, and in my notes it'll tell you and give you examples how easy it actually is to photo stack. Close-ups, even closer. Okay then. I showed you my sort of big brother flash gun. This is a smaller Hamnel flash gun. I thought, well, if I'm going on holiday somewhere, I don't want to take the bigger flash gun. So I bought this again, half price from a camera shop in mint condition. And it's great to use. But look at the bottom, the lens I'm using. It's a very specialist lens. And I didn't even, being a Canon person, I didn't even know it existed. A Canon MP 65mm 1:5 macro lens. The 5 end, the flowers virtually touching the front of the lens, and again, it's very difficult to lens to use. And I sort of finished the first half with just some very quick examples that I actually need to expand on. But this was, I think it's called an ornamental cabbage, some close-ups of that used in this particular lens. And again, I do admit I actually handheld these because I was using my flash gun. And again, I was shooting, I think, 400 ASA at f16. So I didn't really need the tripod. And even with the up to, say, 2 or 3 times macro, I found it easier just sort of resting my arm on a table rather than setting up a tripod. And as you can see, all these have worked quite well. But again, it's another magic thing to see and do. And so I've got all my pictures in the freezer that I'll get round to doing some real close-ups of them. again, you'll see a picture of this. It almost creates to me almost sort of field-like patterns. Again, just a close-up on one colour. So that's end of part 1. Do you want a break now?
I guess you can move right in because it's already 3/4 of an hour.
Is it? Well, it shouldn't be. So we go straight in, okay?
Yeah, go straight in. Yes,
yeah,
thank you.
No problem. So part 2, using software. Okay, I mentioned about using Photoshop, but layers and blending. I know a lot of professional people sort of take this for. Sorry. Okay.
Sorry, carry on.
Okay. Yeah, I know as being professional photographers, and a lot of people in your group will know this inside out, but using layers and using blending images. I did sort of talk about it briefly earlier, but basically in Photoshop, and as I said, it applies in all the other software, Affinity, they've all got these blending mode, and it's a trial and error thing to see which actually works out. So this is how just some random pictures that I chose when I put this together just to give you some idea. So blending mode using color dodge, and again you go through trying different ones, different images, using overlay. And it just brings different ideas as a sandwich basically in Photoshop. And combining images, again, it doesn't always work. This was the difference that I tried on these 2 pictures. It didn't work. So I thought, well, try something different, tried multiply, and that seemed to work a bit better. But it's just a trial and error situation. Like a kaleidoscope, this again, another thing that is quite easy to do, but you must start off with a square in Photoshop, a square image or square area. Apply your rotation to the very center of that square, and again, nothing mind-boggling. Most of these are taken at 60 degrees. You can do it at different degrees if you like. So again, it's sort of quite easy to do, but all these are on transparent layers, so it means you can combine them together, merge them, and then bring them in at different sizes and create any patterns. Again, for advertising, quite a useful technique. And again, you can have them on a white background if you want to, and you can try different bits of software on the particular picture. And going back to... Sorry? Okay.
Okay, sorry, some people are coming in and putting on the mic. Please keep your mics off.
Okay, you can add an edge as well, but again, this technique is endless, and I call this playing. People say, is this photography? But again, that's something to look into. But also another technique I've probably hinted on earlier is a sort of step down technique where I copy the picture and then reduce it, say 95, 90, 85, and gradually make it smaller and smaller in the screen. Again, it's just endless number of combinations what you can actually do. Another bit in Photoshop, again, this is my instructions, and in settings of this are in my notes as well, so you can go through quite easily. But again, these settings and what you use are in Photoshop: mezzotint, radial blur, twirl, and then you use flip the image horizontally, and that's basically the effects. They're quite popular at the moment, these designs, but they're endless. But I go one step further. So this is the type of picture you actually get, so that's okay. But then I'll bring my flowers in, so just to try sort of different techniques, blending my flower in with this technique, and it's endless. So I did this picture, okay, as a next step from this, but then I wanted to go one stage further with this, and last night I actually added a flower on this just to gain almost to follow through with the rest of the picture. Flaming Pear Flood, this is the software that I mentioned to you about. This is free. If you go on the website of Flaming Pear and go down to, I can't remember what they call it, their old software, this is available free, this particular software. And this is what it actually does. It gives reflections. Water looks 100% realistic, and you can change the horizon line, and you can change, you know, the patterns in the water as well. Again, it's just endless. You can sort of play with this particular technique, and it's come out with the right subject that actually suits the subject. You've seen sort of the difference that you've seen in these few images. This software was available, was quite popular a few years ago, called Redfield Fractalis, and it's still available online. And this is some of the pictures that you can produce using this technique. But recently I came across this spectral art software by a company called Jixi Pix, and so it's $20, and this is the very similar effect to Fractalis. But again, you can do what you want. Again, I've actually added flood to this as well. But again, edges and working all on this particular software. And you've got all these settings, and you produce the picture however you want to. It's just endless. And also you can go from your still life that I started off, that I wasn't very happy with. So I just again brought it into this software and just made a different type picture. Again, you can have like the white line treatment in this software, or you can actually have a black line as well. This is some well-known software, the MIPP software, again, fairly universal. And I actually use it for my HDR, more for sharpening than possibly. So with the sort of original picture, there's using this, you know, the HDR treatment, but it's not obvious, and you don't always have to have the it's at 100%. It could be 50, 40 or whatever. And also from this into a mono image with this also works for an HDR mono conversion that to me looks fairly real. But also with it, you can change your original picture using this HDR, high dynamic range, in MIPP. And there it is. So it just gives a bit more depth to the picture. And the same applies to this, the original picture, and in MIPP HDR, that. It just gives a bit more depth to the picture. This is the other one I mentioned earlier to you about Topaz Studio 2. Basically, you select, you know, the shapes and the different things the picture would do. So there's the original picture, and within this software, you can add look category and change, and also you choose a particular subject. So you've got that at hand, and it is a bit of sort of hunting for the correct one that you like, and that's again, I still think that's useful. But you do have some of your favorite. So this is just the simply soft image, electricity, and there's hundreds of these too, and they're all named as well, that you can actually choose, and you can blend these in using the blending modes in your picture, like I've done here. So I brought back the original picture and blended it with the original one, and you can come up with, again, all sort of different types of pictures. And now for something completely different. Again, producing these images, you always come up with bits and pieces you don't know what to do with, so you put them together sometimes and just make something look fairly surreal. And this was in our garden, and it's just amazing how plant life can look almost like I say it's almost like a bird-like face. And this I couldn't believe it, a snapdragon. I don't know what the actual name is. When I saw this, it looked like if there was a pair of hands in front of the face. I said, no, take it away. That looks a bit better to me. So what do I think now? Yeah, it looks like an elephant. So, you know, again, you've gone from that part of the snapdragon to make it look like an elephant. Also come out with different, this is the ornamental cabbage. Again, I just put it in a board, and again, I did a set of sort of 6 different images actually on this. But also with these images, it's up with a plan. Try rotation, blurring them, just to try something different. And once you've done that, you can mirror your picture again, come up with a duplicate picture. So again, it's very abstract, but again, it just gives you something to work on. And here again, another project of this, I only ended up with one picture. I wanted to use this sort of stepping down I showed you earlier with the picture, and then sort of incorporate that into the backdrop. And again, the other ones that I didn't work, but this one works quite well for me. But then you've got your pictures. What you do? You put them in a postage stamp. Easy, really, isn't it? So trees, again, this follows on exactly from the idea of trying to do something with your pressed flowers. So there's some of my pressed flowers or pressed leaves or whatever. So when I pressed them, I saw, oh, they look like trees. So what you do? You put them in a almost a landscape environment. Again, loads of ideas on this. And there's a forget-me-not, put on a bit of rust. This is this close-up picture, the backdrop that I mentioned earlier. To me, it looked like a landscape. So it's a good chance to actually bring my pressed leaf into this sort of a pseudo landscape environment. Again, trying something different. I thought, yeah, that looked okay. That works in quite nice, but I needed something to scale the picture. So I added the person on a bike. It still looked too bright to me, so I reversed it. And I think that works much better. Copy and press flowers, method 2. Okay then. Again, came across this just by mistake. It's a dual cell floodlight, 10 watt here, mains operated, and you can also buy a 20 watt one as well. But also I mentioned about color. This gives a neutral white at 4000 K, so it's quite good for copying. So this is my small light box. You see, not about 1.5 times the size of a banknote. So there it is put together. So 2 methods, using available light with the flower on top, or using the light box on its own. So this is the comparison using it. So the one on the left is just with the light, and the one on the right is using my light box. You could do this on a bigger light box as well if you want to do so. That is not a problem. But the problem with the image on the right, if you've got anything using the light box only, if you've got anything that's dense, obviously it won't shine through. So that is a flaw using this particular method. But if you use your light again, it will then bring in illumination to the sort of the denser part of the picture. So there it is now. If that was taken with the light box only, the middle bit being thicker would have been completely black. But no, the light has just illuminated a part of it. And again, exactly the same. You wouldn't have done that with the light box on its own. Softly soft. Again, this is another personal thing that I actually use. Forget the settings. They don't really mean anything. But I'm using Gaussian blur, mono noise, and lowering the opacity. And this is my effect. And you can see sort of the softness that you can actually get with a picture like this. And to me, again, it's a bit different. These would probably actually make much better prints than they are projected, but it just gives you an idea of the technique that I'm actually using. And close-ups work quite well on this particular subject. And this is again a straight shot taken locally a couple of years ago. And again, the warmth of the top of this picture, the sun was just coming through and shining against a Cotswold stone wall, so that's what gave it its colour. And again, the last couple of pictures in this small section show sort of using the light box earlier with this technique, and that one I think works probably particularly well. And going back full circle to a certain extent, going into my mentioning about fine art at the beginning. Okay, remember, we're coming to the end of the talk tonight, and some images. Again, I mentioned about different ideas. The last few images show how I've actually used flowers to really illustrate a theme. Again, a very simple photograph, again using the poppies, the flower in the sort of fairly sort of deep moving picture. Here, just again, a small poppies, a real poppy, and some small poppy crosses to illustrate the picture. Here again, I mentioned about keep on lowering the size of the picture. Again, you can see on the right and left hand side where I've sort of reduced the picture size by sort of 95, 90, 85, etc. But if you look quickly, it's not so apparent. It seems to almost bring the picture in. And again, I've used the flood software at the bottom of the image. And again, following on from a theme, you know, just with a Spitfire flying across a graveyard, and obviously the movement on the poppies, and obviously the links between obviously our country and your country, obviously through the wars, obviously very poignant to a certain extent. So the last image you're going to see tonight is this one. Again, coming up with this theme of a lonely soldier just walking through a field of poppies in Flanders Field, etc. And something Kevin mentioned earlier about the ideas for flowers, but as I said, my sort of flower talk was based on again trying to show them in completely different ways. So the end. I always like to mention this, no insect or flowers were harmed in the making of this talk. I say notes on the talk will be available at the weekend. So time to stop sharing.